So when we're talking about the corrections in this reconciliation bill, again, it's corrections of overpayments and people that have not been eligible for these programs by law as it is currently written. So when you are arguing about illegals that are receiving Medicaid benefits, 1.4 million, 1.4, they are not eligible. So they will be coming off. So people are not, well, we all are going to die. So for heaven's sakes, folks. Okay, no, but what you don't want to do is listen to me when I say that we are going to focus on those that are most vulnerable. Those that meet the eligibility requirements for Medicaid, we will protect. We will protect them.
We're all going to die. That's Republican Senator Joni Ernst's response to her own constituents voicing concern about the deep cuts that the Republican budget bill is going to have on Americans' health care and food assistance. And Ernst's position is that we're all dying anyway, so hey, what's a few years earlier than anticipated? I wonder if she'd be as lax if it was her own health care that was put at risk. I wonder if she'd be as jokey if it was her parents who relied on Medicaid for coverage. I wonder if she'd be as casual about it if it was her child who relied on the Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP, to survive. Something tells me that we already know the answer to that question. The reality is that there is simply no excuse to explain away these deep cuts. She'll try to parrot the Republican talking point that there's too much fraud and abuse in the system, but we already know what the analysis of this budget bill says. 13.7 million Americans will lose access to health care. You expect us to believe that almost 14 million Americans are erroneously getting that coverage, that bare minimum coverage that Medicaid provides, that all of those people are just able-bodied, healthy folks committing fraud? Or more likely, is it that fraud is what these Republicans always use to justify their deep cuts to programs, even though, interestingly, we never see a single fraud charge? Just like how Elon Musk cried fraud to justify gutting the federal government via Doge, and yet there were no charges and there won't be any charges because the fraud accusations are not real. They are simply a blanket excuse to hide the fact that Republicans do not give a flying fuck about the working class and are looking for any excuse to trot out on television and justify their giveaways to the wealthiest Americans. In fact, I posed that same question to Tommy Lahren on Alex Michelson's show, and she didn't have too much of an answer. I think you and I can both agree that if these folks are committing fraud, that is a serious crime, probably the most serious crime that you could commit. And I mean, anybody who is committing fraud would obviously be charged, tried, convicted. And so can you explain to me how we've been hearing this talking point about fraud, all this fraud is getting eliminated over and over and over again, and yet not a single charge has been filed? So if there's all this fraud that Elon Musk is tweeting about on a daily basis, that Fox is hosting interviews to discuss, where are the charges?
I can't wait for those charges to come down. As you know, it takes a little while.
Again, the fraud charges won't happen, and they know they won't happen, but this claim serves as the GOP's blanket placeholder so that they have plausible deniability to make these cuts, knowing that by the time we realize that there is no fraud, the bill will have already passed and it'll be a done deal, and these Republicans will finally have their precious tax cuts. So they'll just lie because it's not about protecting people, it is about buying time until they can codify those tax cuts that are being paid for by gutting healthcare and food assistance. But hey, we're all gonna die anyway, am I right? Although shockingly, it managed to get worse for Ernst.
I used to teach political science and history when I first became a teacher after leaving the U.S. Navy. And what I taught about was the three branches of government, the checks and balances and balance of power, to our kids in southern Iowa in the high school where I taught. Those are all gone now. And the worst thing is the Senate and the House of Representatives have been rendered useless. And you folks have let it happen. You've sat back and done nothing. The House is the best example. We're still seeing on the Senate, looks like there's a little gumption to fight back against the new dictator. But this has been like a Nazi blitzkrieg, and you folks have sat and done nothing. Now, I know that you were going to go against Pete Hegseth, who is an incompetent fool running the Department of Defense. But you got scared. So my question is this. Are you afraid of Trump? Are you corrupt like Trump? Or are you just at the point you don't care anymore and that's why you don't do anything?
No. So, no, first, thank you for your service. I do appreciate that. Obviously, I don't agree because I don't think our country is being destroyed. On the other hand, I see that our country is being with the federal government, and because I've worked on these squeal issues for so long, I'm not squealing, ma'am. It's the DOGE efforts we're going through. Why was our federal government, sir, because you taught civics, federal government. Why was the federal government established 2.5 centuries ago? It was established for the common defense of the people. So our military defending our country, number one. It was for a common judiciary to settle disagreements. And it was for those things that the people could not do for themselves. That's why the federal government was established. Did it mean planting wildflowers along the interstate? No. All of these other programs that the federal government has been expanded to was not the role of the federal government. The things that were not spelled out, the things that were not spelled out into the Constitution were delegated under the 10th Amendment to the states. So what we are seeing in federal government is the right sizing of the federal government and allowing the states to take up the role that our forefathers intended. It may be chaos to you, but we do have to get back to a semblance of what our country was founded for.
Ah, there it is. The old states' rights argument is back. Isn't it funny how we have the usual spate of talking points that always gets trotted out by the right, regardless of the fact that they've all been disproven? Republicans are the party of fiscal responsibility that is right now exploiting the deficit. Republicans are the party of family values that have thrown in their lot with a serial sexual predator who tried to make an accused trafficker the attorney general. And now Republicans are back to being the party of states' rights, even as we're seeing an unprecedented power grab at the hands of the executive branch. This administration is trying to eliminate habeas corpus, pretending that it's their power to wield, as opposed to the reality, which is that it's actually a check on their power. The administration is arguing the unitary executive theory in court, pretending that the president has sole power in the executive branch. The administration is suing to stop judges from being able to issue nationwide injunctions against their illegal orders. The notion that this White House cares about states' rights, as opposed to simply consolidating every ounce of power in the executive branch, is an absolute joke. Remember, when Roe was overturned, the first thing that Republicans, Lindsey Graham, did in the Senate was to introduce a nationwide abortion ban. The battle cry is always states' rights until the moment it's not. So Joni Ernst can and clearly will lie without an ounce of shame, but luckily her constituents are not blind to her bad faith posturing. It's also worth noting that Ernst is running right now for re-election in 2026. But hey, I'm sure that this line is going to do wonders for her on the campaign trail.
We all are going to die.
Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.